we just came back from a long trip, 4,000 miles. I know some of you drove more, but this was enough for me. I'm not looking forward to driving anytime soon. But last year we went on another trip, and we needed to stay at the hotel for the night. And so I took a while. I spent a significant amount of time kind of researching, trying to find a good deal in a hotel, and I found one. And so we get to the hotel. We check in, and after a brief inspection of the room, Oksana walks in and says, "Okay, nobody takes a shower. Do not touch anything in the bathroom." It was not a very clean hotel room, but it was a great deal. I found a great deal, I also probably need to mention that it took me about 2 months to get back the $50 deposit for incidentals that they charged me when we were checking in. And it took a while. I had to connect to the bank, because the hotel would not want to talk to me anymore. So anyway, needless to say that we choose the hotels a little bit differently now. Have you ever spent a significant amount of time maybe doing some research before making an important decision? Maybe you were choosing a house that you were getting ready to buy. Maybe you're doing research about the house, the condition of the house, maybe the layout, the year that it was built. Maybe you were researching a car and you were looking at different reviews and what people say and the typical problems that come up with this specific make and model. Maybe you were, researching where to go to college. Maybe it was a vacation that you just, unlike me, you probably did a better job, but you spent a lot of time online looking at different things and places to go and what people say and all that kind of stuff. So we do that. We all do that when we are getting ready to make an important decision, especially if it involves a lot of money in making that decision or making that purchase. And whether we realize that or not, the culture that we live in, culture trains us to think like consumers. We live in a culture that kind of trains us all the time to think like consumers. We look at different things and we evaluate those things by maybe our preferences, maybe the convenience of those things, maybe the comfort that those things provide to us. Maybe it's the personalization. And actually, speaking of personalizations, I don't know, we probably don't even stop and think about this, but there's so many things around us that are present in our lives that are personalized according to our preferences and tastes. I mean, you look at your phone and you start using your phone, you mention something in the conversation and then you open Instagram or Facebook and you probably start seeing the ads about things that you just talked about. Because they're trying to personalize it. They try to send you the information, the advertisement that you're most likely going to like and be interested in. Maybe it's the news feed that you open. There's algorithms, they look at what you look and look at what sections you scroll so fast through. And maybe something that you'll keep looking at, and then you end up getting the news according to your preferences. They look at what you prefer to read, the people the sources, the news, the media agencies. When you open the YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, you get to see the things that are very typical. They're personalized to your interests. And if you start clicking on those things and watch some things, there's going to be more information sent that way, that type of information sent to you. Well, that's a part of our life. It's already there. You can't do anything about it unless you just want to turn everything off and not get online or not do anything. Well, like I said, culture trains us to think like consumers. Well, what happens sometimes, or maybe oftentimes, is that we bring the same mindset to the church. Especially, there's this phrase that I learned. I've never heard this before coming here, moving to the U.S. The phrase is called church shopping. You know, there's some people talking about it like we're church shopping. You know, just looking around. Not necessarily doing anything bad. I understand the meaning behind it, but the phrase itself, I've never heard it before. So, whether you are church shopping or maybe you're evaluating the church that you're currently a part of, sometimes we ask questions like this. What does this church offer me? Do I like it? Does the church meet my needs? Do they sing my favorite songs? Does the preacher agree with me? Actually, that's what we're thinking when we're trying to choose. You know, we're never going to phrase it that way. But a lot of people, when they choose a church and they say, I like the preacher, that means that the preacher agrees with you on a lot of things that you have convictions about. That's the type of questions that we ask a lot of the times. We ask, is it conveniently located to me? And none of those questions are necessarily bad. There's definitely not sinful questions to ask. The thing about those questions is that they're not complete. They're not giving you a full picture of things. They do not paint the full picture. And if that's the only type of questions that we ask, then these questions, they tend to produce consumers. If that's where we stick and hang around all the time, if that's the questions, the only type of questions that we use, then those questions, they're likely to produce consumers. The thing is that Jesus, he never described the church as a product to be consumed. He never described, when talking about a church, he never described it as an entertainment to be enjoyed. He never described it as a provider of a weekly spiritual experience. Never does Jesus in the New Testament, God in the New Testament talks about the church in this light, from this perspective. So what if there's a different set of questions or criteria that should be our primary focus when we are either choosing a church or evaluating the church that we are currently a part of? So I thought that we could spend a few weeks just focusing on what the church is and what actually matters. And so the new series is going to be called God's Church, What Actually Matters. And what I want us to do is really look at things that matter, because sometimes, depending on our life situations, depending on our preferences, depending on the things that we like, the way that we look and evaluate the church, the focus may shift from what God says that matters to what we think should matter. And that's not a good way to go about the church. So I wanted us to spend a few weeks talking about those things, looking at things that God is saying that need to be present in the church. And so today's lesson, today's message is kind of the introduction to that series. And we're going to be talking about what is the church. So we'll talk about several truths about the church and the things that we should keep in mind. Again, whether you're visiting here today, you're still kind of on your search process, or sometimes we'll look at our church, we get so used to things, and we start looking at different things that maybe God is not really saying are important. So the first truth about the church is that the church belongs to Jesus. In Matthew 16, verse 18, and this is NIV, Jesus, remember, he asked his disciples what people say about Jesus. And they say, well, some say this, some say this. And I said, what do you say about me? And then Peter says, you are the Messiah, the Lord. And then Jesus responds, and I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Jesus is saying, I will build my church. Jesus is making a statement that the church belongs to him. He is the one who's going to build it. He's the one who's going to own it. He's the one that the church belongs to. Jesus did not say, I will build your church. I will not build your pastor's church. I will not build your elder's church or the shepherd's church. I will build my church. So the church belongs to Jesus. The church is about Jesus. The church exists for Jesus and because of Jesus. He's the one who sustains it. Why is that important? You may sound like, oh, I've heard this 1,000 times. I know the church belongs to Jesus. Why is this important to ask this question? Why is this truth important? Well, the reason it is important is because it changes the question, what do I want the church to be like? To what does Jesus want his church to be? The whole question that we use to evaluate the church changes. This truth changes this question that we ask. Instead of asking, what do I want the church to be? The question needs to be, since Jesus is the one that, the church belongs to him, the question should be, what does Jesus want his church to be like? Think of it this way. You're sitting at home, one of your church brothers or sisters walks in your house bringing a bucket of paint, and they start painting your walls pink, and they start rearranging the furniture and in your house. And ladies, they walk in the kitchen and they start rearranging the stuff in your kitchen from one drawer to another one. That's the heresy. Yeah, I know. It's like, no. You probably will have a few words to say about that. Right? That's my house. Therefore, my rules. My house, my rules. I have these things here just because I want them here. If the church belongs to Jesus, we need to be asking, what does Jesus want his church to be like? Because it's his house, his people, his church. And this difference may not seem very significant to you, but so often, people kind of hijack the church to make it fit their idea of what the church should be like, rather than ask this question, what does Jesus want his church to be? That's the first. The church belongs to Jesus. Second truth is the church is Christ's body, which he made you a part of. The church is the body of Christ, and he made you a part of his church. That's a fact. That's what the Bible says. That's what God says. You become one of my children. You are a Christian. I made you a part of this body of mine. In Romans 12, I was just kind of debating between two passages, between 1 Corinthians 12. That was a longer passage. I didn't want to spend a long time. But if you're taking notes, write down 1 Corinthians 12, verses 12 through 27. Paul goes into great lengths about the body, the church being a body, and church members, Christians, being parts of this body. We're going to read Romans 12, verses 4 and 5 from the New Living Translation. It says, just as our bodies have many parts, and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. So, Paul is saying in this passage and in 1 Corinthians 12, again, I encourage you to go and read it, where he's talking about you are, maybe some of you, he's making an analogy, one of you may be an eye, one of you an ear. You cannot say, well, since I'm not an ear, I don't belong to the body. No, he's saying that every member, every part of the body matters. So if you ever think, oh, I'm a nobody, oh, nobody notices me. No, God says you matter because he made you a part of this body. Everybody, every part of the body, every member of the church matters. Every member contributes. And every member is needed. And the analogy with the body helps us a lot. Paul, when he talks about the church, he does not describe the church as a group of spectators. He doesn't describe the church as an audience. He doesn't describe the church as consumers. He describes the church and members of the church as active participants and members in the body. He's talking about the hands that are serving. He's talking about the feet that are moving. He's talking about the eyes that see. He's talking about the ears that hear. So, what do you do when a part of your body does not do what it was designed to do? Like you wake up and you can't move your arm. Well, what do? You go see a doctor because you recognize this is a problem. This is a problem. A part of my body does not do what it's supposed to do, what it was designed to do. So, if we realize that in a physical sense in our lives about our bodies, sometimes what people do, what church members do, is they kind of disconnect themselves, or maybe they're fine with just being a passive, me just being present sometimes when I don't have other things to do. I'll be there. Well, that affects the whole body. And more than it affects the body, it affects you if you're that kind of part of the body. Because the body is going to be suffering, is going to notice that one of the parts either is missing, is disconnected, or is not functioning. The body is going to miss that. But the disconnected part definitely cannot thrive and survive. So that is another important truth about the church that we need to remember and keep in mind and focus on when we are asking the question, what does God want his church to be like? Third one, the third truth is the church is a spiritual family. The church is a spiritual family. Ephesians 2:19. So now, Paul is saying talking to Christians in Ephesus. So now you Gentiles are no longer strangers and foreigners. You are citizens along with all of God's holy people. You are members of God's family. Can you imagine how excited those Gentiles, people who used to be Gentiles, they were when they heard that? I mean, it was for centuries, they were cut off. They could not belong to God's people. They were not allowed to go into the temple. They were not considered a part of God's holy people. And now Paul is writing them a letter because of the faith in Jesus. He's saying, you are now citizens with all of God's holy people. You are members of God's family. He's writing to Christians and saying, you are members of God's family. So that's another description, a way, an analogy that Paul is using when he talks about the church. He's saying that the church is a spiritual family. We're saying, okay, what's the big deal with the church being a family? Well, being a part of the family kind of brings a different attitude. When you are a part of the family versus being a consumer, it's just totally two different attitudes. Because consumers, they may attend if they have time, if they don't have any other plans, but family members, they commit to being a part of their family. Consumers ask, what am I getting? Family members, they'll ask, how can I help? Consumers leave when they just dislike something or experience some sort of inconvenience. They're free to go. They don't have any commitments. Family works through challenges. Being a member of the family and being a consumer Two totally different things. In real life, you do not go out shopping for a new family when you experience some sort of inconvenience, disagreement, or you dislike something in your family. If you do, I'm really sorry. You're going to be on a constant, permanent search for a perfect family. Let me tell you, it does not exist. Because just like churches, families consist of imperfect people. And so we just in the same way, like we don't go shopping for a new family when I dislike something, I disagree with something in my family. No, I'm a part of the family. We're going to work out our disagreements. We're going to just talk and work things out. Because family is about commitment, not convenience. Family works things out instead of just constantly switching families, hoping to find a perfect one. So, the church belongs to Jesus. The church is a body of Christ that God made me a part of. The church is a spiritual family. And also, the fourth one that I wanted to focus on today is the early church that was devoted to God's priorities. In Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, this is what it says about the first church. They devoted themselves. And this word, sometimes they did this. They devoted themselves. There's a special word. When you devote yourself to something, it takes time. It takes your heart. It takes commitment. You stick to it when you devote yourself to something. So they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and they had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So Luke is giving us a history, a description, an account of the church and its beginning and how it started. And he's just giving us the summary, the snapshot of the church when it was just started. And so this is what he's saying about it. This is like the summary, the characteristics of the church and what it was characterized by. So they devoted themselves to God's priorities, to teaching, to fellowship, to prayer, to generosity, to the mission of the church. They didn't devote themselves to his personal preference. They didn't devote themselves to comfort. They didn't devote themselves to convenience. So, to summarize, the church belongs to God. The church is a body, Christ's body, that he made me a part of. The church is a spiritual family, and the early church devoted themselves to God's priorities. So how does this relate to me? Well, I'm thinking that we need to start asking different questions. Maybe some of us need to start asking different questions that we're used to asking when we're trying to evaluate the church, or maybe when we're looking for a church. I don't hope you go out after this message, going out and looking for a new church. Hopefully that doesn't push you to do that. But if you end up doing that, at least I want to give you a good set of questions. So, do I primarily see the church as a service that I attend or a family that I belong to? Am I consuming or am I contributing? Am I committed or am I casually attending when I don't have any other plans? Am I evaluating the church biblically, or am I evaluating the church according to my preferences? We have to be honest about this. A lot of the things we fight for and complain about, they're just our preferences. We have to be honest with ourselves. There are oftentimes the things that people fight about in churches, they're not biblical things. They are personal preferences. Again, we need to be honest. And so the challenge that I want to offer you is this week, instead of just asking, what can my church do for me? Try to ask, how can God use me to make His church even stronger? And I want to challenge you and encourage you to take one step beyond attendance towards the church as your family or part of you being part of Christ's body. Maybe one thing you can do is introduce yourself to somebody you don't know. I mean, in your family, you know everybody, right? Even if you have a large family, when the family gets together, you don't sit there wondering, like year after year, who is this person? You know who they are. You know what their name. If you know everybody in your physical family, why should it be any different in their spiritual one? And all it takes is just coming up to somebody you don't know and say, hi, my name is so-and-so. What is your name? Ask them, what is your favorite food? What do you like to do? Are you from Odessa or are you from somewhere else? Before long, you will know everybody in this church. So, introduce yourself to someone you don't know, someone new. Find a ministry team to join if you're not a part of one yet. Find a team where you can use your God-given gifts to make this church better, stronger, more loving, more serving, more equipped. Pray for your church. Pray for your church. I know we all pray for ourselves. I know we pray for our loved ones. Do you often pray for your church? That's our family. That's my family. Try to encourage someone. Let me tell you, people need encouragement. You don't know what a difference you can make by saying a couple of encouraging words to somebody. You don't know. You will never know what it will mean to these people, how timely it could be. I mean, people are thinking over quitting, serving. People are thinking about leaving all the time. I mean, everybody has their own battle that they're fighting that we don't know. Unless we talk and kind of go beneath the surface, how are you? Good about you? Yeah, good. I'm doing good. Everybody's doing good. Until we go beneath the surface, we will never, ever know what battles people are fighting around us. So encouragement is always needed. And another thing that families do is they pray. They carry each other's burdens. We have a prayer team that is there for you as we sing the next worship song. They'll be there in the back. And I want to encourage you, go if you have a burden. Go if you have a prayer need. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not something bad. Actually, it's good when you ask and when you share your burden with somebody else. They'll be there in the back waiting for you, to pray for you and to pray with you. So I want to encourage you to do that. And we'll pick it up from here, right here, and we'll continue next week talking about God's church and what actually matters. Let's pray.